aboard Pink Monorail. I'm your pilot, Michelle Valladolid, and next to me is my co-pilot, Noe Valladolid.
Hey everybody.
Last time, we talked about Disney's reaction to the various theme parks popping up all over the country. This time, Disney goes to the World's Fair. Walt wanted to bless Disneyland with all sorts of things, but he lacked the capital to do so. He and his Imagineers had filmed actor Buddy Hebsen doing a dance routine from 4 angles in front of a wall marked with measuring lines, and had built a little dancing man who did that same routine. Walt wanted to go bigger, but he just didn't have the money. 2 events happened that shaped the Disney company for decades to come. The first was the release of the smash hit movie Mary Poppins. Mary Poppins funded MAPO, M-A-P-O, the animatronics and technology arm of WED. On the Walt Disney World monorail I drove, Blue Delta, in 1989, there was a big red light labeled MAPO. I knew from being a Disney geek what MAPO was. I just didn't know why the emergency light was labeled MAPO. The pilot who let me drive for what seemed to be a mile-long stretch didn't know either, just that the MAPO was the emergency light. During the pandemic, new guys at Imagineering were getting rid of what they said was useless old stuff, manuals, models, etc., essentially getting rid of MAPO. Fortunately, someone called animatronic genius and all-around sweet guy Garner Holt, and he went to Disney and rescued all of that important history. The second event to take place was the New York World's Fair, which wasn't an official World's Fair. To be an official World's Fair, the event must be regulated and approved by the Bureau International des Expositions, the BIE. Based in Paris, home to many spectacular expositions, the BIE governs large-scale international expositions. Cities and states can apply to host an official expo by contacting the BIE or the State Department in the U.S. Because the 64-65 World's Fair was not official, the fair had competition and difficulty for some participating countries and industries. To my knowledge, Walt Disney had little or no trouble with the BIE. Now we're going to take a short break and listen to a message from our sponsors. And we're back. The theme of the fair was Peace Through Understanding. The symbol is the Unisphere, a globe with a fountain, a 140-foot-tall globe made of stainless steel, located in Flushing Meadows, Corona Park, Queens, New York, headed by a private corporation, spearheaded by Robert Moses. If you want to know a bit more about Robert Moses, Behind the Bastards podcast has an episode called The Man Who Ruined New York that tells all about him. Moses charged the pavilion operators rent, and the fair ran 2 years, so was disavowed by the BIE. Google says some notable exhibits and innovations were General Motors' Futurama 2, which showed the world in 2064, and I have right up there on my wall a pamphlet from the Futurama exhibit. AT&T's Picture Phone, which would make its way to Disneyland later. People say, oh, there were 4 things from the fair. No, there were 5. There was the Picture Phone from AT&T, made its way to Disneyland in 1967, and I remember using it. Do you remember using it?
Yeah, I do.
IBM had a computer presentation, the first real mention of personal computers someday. Of course, that personal computer would fill up a room.
Right.
Sinclair Oil's Dino Land had static dinosaur sculptures, and it's what most of the kids who have visited the fair remember. Do you remember the fair? I remember a little. I remember the dinosaurs.
Mm-hmm. What kid wouldn't remember dinosaurs?
What kid wouldn't remember awesome dinosaurs? The New York State Pavilion had observation decks, and they introduced the Belgian waffle.
Ooh.
The fair ran for 2 6-month seasons, April 22nd to October 18th, 1964, and April 21st to October 17th, 1965. Pavilions from 80 nations, 24 U.S. states, and nearly 350 American companies. The fair was broken up into 5 sections: federal and state, international, transportation, lake amusement, which was the midway, and industrial areas. The fair started out with 139 pavilions, 34 concessions and shows. Among these concessionaires was Brass Rail, who ran most of the food stands and restaurants, from hamburgers and hot dogs to the Brass Rail Steakhouse. Architect Victor Lundy created a futuristic-looking bubble roof for many of the Brass Rail's buildings. They also sold souvenirs and books. While the fair was in planning stages, several companies teamed up with Disney to provide content for their pavilions at the World's Fair. Disney charged a hefty sum, but delivered on it, and made sure that when the fair was over, he he got to keep the shows for Disneyland. Walt was no dummy. The first show I'm going to look at is the Ford Wonder Rotunda. People would get into magically moving Ford vehicles, Galaxies, Mustangs, and the like. Everyone wanted a Mustang. They would go back in time. Those dinosaurs must look familiar. They're the same ones in Primeval World. Walt took them home and put them alongside the Grand Canyon diorama. Yes, they're the battling dinosaurs from Rite of Spring in Fantasia. That's not all that Walt took home from the fair from Ford. The dead mammoth got a paint job, and his rear end can now be seen on the Jungle Cruise, sticking out of the leaves. But that's not all. Last and not least is the transportation method itself. Cars were replaced with stylish buckets, and the People Mover was born. Also, some of Mark Davis's gags from the show made it into the World of Motion wonderful classic Disney ride at Epcot Center. The ride itself was called Magic Skyway, and the car radio had different languages. English narration by Walt first year, Henry Ford II the second year.
So just to be sure, so the visitors, were they getting in buckets or were they getting in cars?
They were getting in cars.
And these cars were on a system designed by Bob Gurr that was sort of the precursor to the Omnimover system and the People Mover system.
Correct.
If you're interested, if you have cable and you remember the old Gas Monkey Garage Show with Richard Rollins and Aaron, there was a lady who actually had a car that they had ordered that was a model from that World's Fair era, because one of the things you could do at the Ford Pavilion was you can put a down payment on the car to make your reservation for that model, that particular model of Mustang, which was fairly new. And when they were looking at it in the Gas Monkey Garage Show, they couldn't make heads or tails on what exactly production number it was. It still actually had the grease paint markers on some of the engine parts because they didn't really drive it that much. It was pretty much sitting in a garage for like 40 or 50 years. And she said her and her boyfriend, they went that year to the World's Fair. They fell in love with the car. They ordered one right away. They put it in their down payment. So they got one of the very, very earliest production models. So it made it super rare, and it was hilarious that Richard and his friend Deep Pockets Dennis, they didn't realize what a gem they had. They actually had a Mustang from the Futurama.
No, it was the Magic Skyway.
The Magic Skyway.
Ford Wonder Rotunda.
The Ford Wonder Rotunda.
Now, this week, Noah got me a Christmas present a little early, and he got me the Johnny Lightning Ford Mustang from the fair. It's like a Hot Wheels, but it's cooler.
Yeah, so it even comes in a little display box that says the World's Fair, and it looks really cute. Anyhow, if you want to see one of the actual cars that survived, you might want to look up that episode of I don't know the name of the show other than it was the Gas Monkey Garage Show. Didn't know what it was.
Did they say how many Mustangs were sold at the fair?
I don't think they said.
44,000.
Wow.
I know.
Okay.
The next pavilion was the Carousel of Progress, Progress Land. I've seen the model for this building. It is simply fantastic, thanks to Richard Kraft. General Electric hired Disney after he showed them the miniature show he planned with a carousel. They figured it was easier and also unexpected to move the audience rather than the stages. There were 4 stages plus a loading room. People entered the loading room where they found a colorful wall that kept changing colors. The song There's a Great Big Beautiful Tomorrow started, and guests found themselves moving into the 1900s. Dad greeted them and showed off the technological marvels of the day. The song started again and they moved to the 1920s. So Dad is sitting in a chair, fanning himself.
A rocking chair?
No.
No?
A regular chair.
Uh-huh.
Fanning himself. And Alice Davis, our dear departed friend, did the costumes for Carousel of Progress. And she was on her knees in front of Father, tightening the bands on the back of his pants. Because audio animatronics figures, you can't step into a pair of pants. You have to tie them on.
Yeah, they have a giant opening in the back similar to one of those hospital gowns.
Right.
So you have to pull the arms and the legs through them and then tie them in the back.
She was in the middle of doing this, and the show started up. And Father said, hottest summer we've had in years. She looks behind her, and there is Walt with some GE executives. She straightens up the pants, gets up off her knees, walks backstage. No, Walt never said a word about it. I'd be afraid to be near a moving animatronic figure because of the amount of pounds of pressure.
Right.
But she was fearless. The family continues to pop in on the sides with rotational side stages. So not only does the carousel, the audience moves, but on the stage, the 2 side stages are also carousels that flip.
So it's like a a donut ring on the outside that rotates, and then on the inside there's a couple of rotating platforms.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, like gears and a giant gear.
And they use the light effect where you shine the light. It's like at the ceiling in the Haunted Mansion stretching room. You shine the light on the outside and it looks solid. You shine the light on the inside and you can see what's inside.
Right.
They do that. Act 3 is in the 1940s and Act 4 is in the 1960s. No rotational stages for the last one. They say, Mom and Dad are no longer with us. And the audience go,
Oh.
They're in a retirement community.
Yeah.
There goes their plane now. I loved seeing that plane take off at Disneyland. But the best thing was the Siamese cat. Also, I have on my grail list a GE colorful light-up Christmas tree like in the show. Costco has them. The attraction then was a source. Chuck Smith was a source for this. The General Electric nuclear fusion demonstration simulated. Then Medallion City, not Progress City, like at Disneyland. More like a home of the future displaying like Communicore and Innovention style. GE's latest and greatest products. Tucked in here was the Toucan and Parrot show. One bird was hypnotized to think he was at the 1939 World's Fair and was talking to a utility pole about electricity, a precursor to Bird and the Robot at World of Motion in Epcot Center. And now we're going to take a break. And we're back. The third attraction that Walt Disney worked on for the World's Fair was for the Illinois Pavilion. Great moments with Mr. Lincoln. Like I said earlier, Walt and his Imagineers had gotten the little man to dance. Now it was time to get a full-size human to stand, speak, and sit down. Bob Gurr was put on the project, and he has horror stories of the figure smashing his chair, throwing his chair, shooting hydraulic fluid all over the place, generally causing mayhem. But they got him to work so well that people were convinced it was an actor. A Japanese wheel company nearby gave out ball bearings, and people would throw ball bearings at Mr. Lincoln trying to get him to flinch or break character. But he was the real deal, and halfway through the fair, he was replaced by an even better Mr. Lincoln, and the original went off to Disneyland. And the Imagineers had to clean up ball bearings off the floor every night.
Didn't they eventually tell the manufacturers next door to stop giving out ball bearings?
And they didn't.
They just encouraged them to give more? And a pea shooter straw?
The last show from Disney from the fair almost didn't happen. Joan Crawford, yes, the actress, was head of PepsiCo through marriage and widowhood.
Okay.
She wanted to do something with United Nations for the fair and asked Disney. They called Disney. They patched her through to WED. Whomever answered the phone told her they were too busy and couldn't do it. And to this day, we don't know who that was.
It wasn't me. I wasn't there. I was innocent of that one.
Now, Walt Disney never went to Hollywood parties. He didn't like them. But for some reason, he went to a Hollywood party, and there was Joan Crawford. She said, "I'm sorry we couldn't work together on the United Nations project." Walt said, "What are you talking about?" The next morning, he pitched the idea for It's a Small World, a boat ride through animatronic children all singing their national anthems. He got his best people on it, Mark and Alice Davis, Mary Blair, the Sherman Brothers, and Raleigh Crump to do a kinetic sculpture outside. Mark came up with the idea to make the children dolls, because dolls are pretty much universal. Alice designed the costumes. Mary Blair designed the ride, and it's the most beautiful thing on earth. Walt realized that the national anthems would create a cacophony and hired the Sherman Brothers to do a rondelay. Robert Sherman was a liberator of the Dachau concentration camp, and he had been moved by the Cuban Missile Crisis and wrote what he called A Prayer for Peace. It's a Small World. Raleigh and Walt loved the model they made for the Towers of the Four Winds.
Yeah, the Towers of the Four Winds to this day is one of the most beautiful kinetic sculptures that's ever existed.
But when they saw the completed heavy steel full-size version, they didn't like it.
No, it's too bad for them. I liked it.
Well, you never saw the big heavy one.
I saw pictures of it.
Oh, okay. For Disneyland's 10-year anniversary, Walt did a TV special showing off new things at Disneyland. All of the interior It's a Small World footage was from the fair. The sets are a little different, and I could tell that's not Disneyland.
But still, the animatronics and the design and everything.
Right. Mr. Lincoln was the first to appear at Disneyland, July 18th, 1965, the day after Disneyland's 10th birthday. On May 28, 1966, It's a Small World opened in a fantastic clock building designed by Raleigh Crump. Children from all over the world poured water from their country into the flume. On July 24th, New Orleans Square opened. No attractions, just shops and restaurants. The mayor of the real New Orleans was there for the festivities. Most of Tomorrowland is closed for Tomorrowland 67. Now we get to the sad part at the end. On December 15th, 1966, Walt Disney died of acute circulatory collapse following a battle with lung cancer. Well, this time we talked about the World's Fair and Disney. Next time we're going to talk about Busch Gardens, starting from 1906.
Now, before we wrap up, Shelley, if I remember correctly, when they were designing the It's a Small World attraction, they were figuring out the placement of the flumes, the direction of the flumes, the sort of the sequence of the countries, and at the same time, they were figuring out how much space it would take in the Disneyland park so that they were able to make adjustments and have the concrete and whatever they needed built ahead of time. So literally as soon as it was finished at the World's Fair, they were able to easily port it over. Was that right?
Yes.
Now that saves a lot of trouble. So if anybody contacts WED or Disney Imagineering to come up with their expo, don't be surprised if they're already mapping out that part of the park that it's going to be brought to as soon as the attraction's done.
I don't know if we're ever going to see Disney at an expo again. Expos are different now.
Well, you never know. You never know. We've seen Disney make big presentations at video game conferences and at comic book conventions and even at the D23. So it's just evolved a little. That wraps up this episode of the Pink Monorail Podcast, Manufacturing the Magic. Now, Shelley, if somebody wants to read more of your history pieces, where can they find you?
They can find me at micechat.com, the happiest place in cyberspace.
And if somebody wants to support the podcast, where can they do that?
You go to patreon.com/fab, F-A-B.
If somebody wants to find out more of my writings and my work, I usually talk about video games, but I also cover Disney. You can just do a Google search for the Street Writer Podcast. Right now, I am covering a little bit of the Disney video games and talking about Oswald the Lucky Rabbit. So that's as of the middle of October 2025. So if you're listening in the future and you go to my blog, just search October 2025 to see what I was talking about with Oswald. So that does it for us. We look forward to seeing you on the next stop of the Pink Monorail Podcast. Have a great day, everybody. A special thank you to our sponsor, Circa 1955. Luxillume is a small business created by our friend Nicole. She makes fragrance oils, sprays, and non-GMO pure soy wax candles with no additives or fillers. Every run is made in small batches, ensuring the best quality possible. She also does custom orders for special events such as graduations, birthdays, and weddings. Nicole is also a huge Disney fan. She has a line called Circa 1955, which celebrates Disney theme parks, movies, and animated features. If you are looking for the perfect gift to surprise a fellow Disney fan, then be sure to visit luxillume.com. If you enter the code PINK15 at checkout, that's PINK15, then you'll get 15% off your first order. Be sure to support a small business that also gives back to the community. The Pink Monorail Podcast is part of the Jim Hill Podcast Network. This includes the Epic Universal Podcast, The Disney Dish, Fine Tuning, Marvel Us Disney, and I Want That Too. Be sure to listen, like, and subscribe to the entire catalog. You're going to love it.